If you ache for truth, goodness, and beauty, if you're hungry for a Christianity with substance and strength, if you long for a faith that's big and bold and biblical and all about Jesus Christ, if you're inspired by the idea of one church that has spanned 20 centuries, 24 time zones, and 2 hemispheres, enfolding every race, nation, and language, then you're considering Catholicism. So I'm here with Cory in the second of 2 conversations we're having this evening in this series, OCIA, The Bridge to Rome. And in the last episode, we talked about the sacraments of initiation, baptism, confirmation, the Eucharist, which are the ways that people enter the church. And we made the point that in OCIA, you are differentiated into either catechumens or candidates. Catechumens receive all 3 of those sacraments. Candidates only receive 2. But especially catechumens receive all 3 of those sacraments at something called the Easter Vigil. And really, if you think about the road to Rome terminating at the OCIA bridge, the end of the bridge is the Easter Vigil. Once you get to the other side of the bridge, you step off the stepping off point from the bridge to the city of Rome or whatever is the Easter Vigil Mass. A frequent question I get is, well, what happens? What is it like? What people are like, it seems mysterious. They don't know what they're getting into. They've heard all these horrible things, like it's 3.5 or 4 hours long, and it's, So in any case, we're going to talk about that big, huge moment at the end of the process for catechumens and some candidates, Easter Vigil. So, Cory, here we go. What is Easter Vigil?
Yes. So the Easter Vigil is the centerpiece, so the crown jewel of the whole year of the liturgy in the church. It is the very beginning of the Easter season, and it is the celebration of Jesus' resurrection. And so you've just had Holy Week. You just had Holy Thursday, in which the Last Supper and the institution of the Eucharist was commemorated. You just had Good Friday, where Christ's death on the cross has been commemorated. And then you get to Holy Saturday, and of course, Christ lay in the tomb. That's a quiet day. And then you get to the evening. So the evening or before, we talk about Christmas Eve, the night before Christmas. It's Easter Eve is the night before. It's the vigil. And you begin the celebration of Easter. Now, Jesus rose from the dead. Nobody saw it happen. It happened sometime in the night. And so that's when this liturgy is. By the liturgical norms of the church, it has to take place after the sun has set. And so that's going to depend on where you are and when Easter is that year.
Let's just make a quick distinction here, Cory, about the concept of vigil masses in general, because there are vigil masses every week, the rest of the year too. So for the ancient Jews and for a lot of ancient cultures, the day began or the day ended when the sun went down. Yep. So once the sun went down, the day was over and it's the new day. So we weirdly divide up the start of a new day in the middle of the night. But in ancient cultures, you didn't know when it was the middle of the night. You didn't have clocks. So what you said is when the sun went down, that was the end of one day and the beginning of the next day. So the night is the beginning of the day, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
And so therefore, once the sun has set liturgically, because going back to the ancient Jews and to the ancient Christians who picked up on that, once the sun has set on Saturday, it is now Sunday from a liturgical standpoint, which is why in your local parish, you can go to a Saturday night mass, and it'll be called the Vigil Mass or a Saturday night vigil. And the liturgical readings are the readings for the next day.
Sunday.
They're not the Saturday readings, they're the Sunday readings, because once the sun goes down, technically, liturgically, it's Sunday already. So when we get to Easter, once the sun sets on Saturday, it is the beginning of Easter Sunday.
Yes. Yep. Liturgically it is.
So then the question becomes, when does that start? Because I had somebody ask me that the other day in our parish. They said, okay, so like this Easter Vigil, what time does it start?
Yeah, so on an ordinary Sunday, or you see this with solemnities, which are the biggest feast days of the year as well, it just has to be evening. And ordinarily that could be like 5 o'clock, 5 p.m. You'll see a lot of parish vigil masses for Sundays or holy days at that time. But that's not the case for the Easter Vigil, because for the symbolism and the imagery of the liturgy, it's important that it's dark, that it's night when the thing starts, and that'll become plain as we begin describing the liturgy. And so you have to determine, given Easter moves around, it can be at the end of March, it can be most of the way through April. And so exactly when sunset is going to vary and where you are in the world. And so you have to determine when will the sun be down, and then you can figure out when your vigil liturgy can begin.
Yeah, I think it's kind of geeky and interesting. As you say, the date of Easter floats around because it is tied to a lunar holiday. So there is tied to the ancient Jewish Passover, which was a lunar holiday. It had to do with the first full moon after the vernal equinox kind of thing.
Yes.
The first Sabbath day after the first full moon after the spring equinox. And that's going to float around at different times. That's why in different years, Easter is different days. So as to your point, because the days are getting longer, Easter, when it's April 4, sunset is earlier than it is on May 4 or whatever, right?
Realistically, it's going to be sometime between 8 and 9 p.m.
Well,
in our part of the world. Yeah.
I'm geeking out on this. And so
go for it. I'm not
trying.
trying to throw a wet blanket on it. I'm just trying to give the listener a realistic idea of when that might be.
No, I know, but I'm just going to bore our listener to death because I think this is interesting. So one thing is when in the calendar year is it? Is Easter early in April or later in April, because the days are getting 6 minutes longer or whatever, depending on your latitude versus longitude. The thing is your longitude. So if you're in a time zone, like where we are in the Eastern time zone, okay?
Yep.
So the Eastern time zone is like 1,000 miles wide from a longitude standpoint. And where I live at least, is like right up against the western edge of our time zone. Like I can look out the window of my house and I can see the end of the time zone in the middle of Lake Michigan. So the thing is that as the sun is moving across the sky, is later here than it is in New York City, which is like 800 miles over there.
We're in the same time. Yeah, a little later than where I am, which is 2 hours east of you. Yeah.
Because the sun's moving across the sky. So if the sun is setting at 9 o'clock here, it might be setting at 8 o'clock, 1,000 miles to the east. So that's why the local place, your latitude and your longitude and your time, and therefore they have all these interesting tables and interesting concepts. Like when technically is sunset? Is it when it goes below the trees? Is it when it touches the water in the ocean? There's a thing called nautical twilight, because the sun gets down to the bottom and then it goes, but you can still see things even if it goes down. So there's these tables, these astronomical tables that say when you have actually crossed out of nautical twilight into technically night, and they pull up these tables. So in our diocese, our local bishop says you can start Easter Vigil this year at 8:47 p.m. At your church, the same year, it might be at 8:42. And in New York City, it might be at 8:20. It all depends on where you are. Now, I know I just lost most of the audience in the last couple of minutes, but I find that to be fascinating. So if you say, when does it start? It says the answer is it starts when the sun has fully set where you are. And this is why for your weekly Saturday night mass, because the sun is changing throughout the course of the year, the sun sets later in the summer and earlier in the winter. And if you changed the Saturday night mass, you'd have to change it. Like it would be 6 minutes later or earlier at different times, right? You'd say, oh, this week, if we waited till sunset, you'd say, hey, in January, the Saturday night mass is at 4:30 in the afternoon, but in June, it's at 9:15 at night. And that would be chaotic. So you just go, oh, we'll call it 5 o'clock. Yeah. Anyway, I find that all to be fascinating. Nobody else does, but okay, now we've indulged my nerd stuff. You go on.
Yes, so it's going to be dark, partly because Christ literally would have risen from the tomb unseen by any human eye sometime when it was dark, between the Sabbath and the first day of the week, which we call Sunday, but also because of the symbolism of the liturgy. So you're starting in darkness, which is symbolic of death and sin, because Christ, he died and he took on our sin. And the beginning of the liturgy, the first part of the Easter Vigil liturgy is called the Lucernarium, or the service of light. That Lucernarium is just the Latin term. And so you start with a new fire. So once it's dark, the people of the parish will gather outside, sometimes in front of the front doors, or depending on the geography of the property, it may be some ways away. But they'll light a fire. And so that fire will provide light and warmth in the dark and the cold, which symbolizes death and sin. And that light, that fire, is symbolic of the resurrection of Christ, the light of Christ coming back into the world with his resurrection in the middle of that night of death and sin.
I literally could not do this without you, because this show is 100% listener supported. There are no ads, no sponsors. So, if the episodes are helping you to understand the faith, to answer your questions, or draw you closer to historic Catholic Christianity, would you consider becoming a patron? For as little as $5 a month, you'll get every regular episode organized into topical playlists, plus exclusive bonus content, extra conversations, video Q&As, deep dives, live streams, behind the scenes, and more. Just head to patreon.com/considering Catholicism or tap the link in the show notes. Together, we're educating, equipping, and exciting people about the beauty of the Catholic faith.
And so you have that fire, and you have prayers to bless that fire. And then you have the blessing and the preparation of what's called the Paschal candle, or the Easter candle. If you've been in a Catholic church, you may have seen it. It's in the church throughout the year, typically near the baptismal font. But it's a very large, very tall candle, and it has symbolism inscribed on it. It has a cross, the cross of Christ. It has the Alpha and the Omega, these Greek letters that represent the beginning and the end, because Christ as God is both the beginning and the end of all things. It has the numerals of the year of the Easter Vigil to symbolize Christ's dominion over all time, over the past, the present, and the future. And then it will have grains of incense that are pushed into it by the priest during these prayers that represent the 5 wounds of Christ on the cross. So they're put into the Paschal candle during these prayers and blessings at the fire. And then the Paschal candle is lit. And at this point, the congregation has candles, but they're not lit. So they're all in darkness. And so a procession forms with the deacon or priest, if there isn't a deacon present, carrying the Paschal candle from the fire towards the church. And so the people and the rest of the clergy all follow. And there's a structure of chant where he'll stop at several points along that procession and chant the light of Christ. And the people will say, "Thanks be to God." And the priests and the servers will light their candles at one of those stops. The rest of the people will light their candles at one of those stops. And so they'll be bringing symbolically the light of Christ from that fire, from the candle to their candles into the church. And so they'll all be going into the church and taking their places. And so then the church will be lit by that blessed fire. And then all of the lights in the church will be lit to show the light of Christ coming back into the world with his resurrection.
Yeah, that is just a really exciting part of it. And I don't
Oh,
mean
it's
to
awesome.
be,
Yeah.
I don't mean to be flippant at all. Sometimes I am, but I don't mean to be here. But it's cool because there's fire, which
Yeah.
is like super cool.
Who doesn't-
It's like fire. You get to play with fire. You start outside and all the things you described, and there's the big fire and the marching in with fire and the lighting of fire, and it's very dramatic. Super
Yeah, it's very meaningful. Like it's really great.
And then we transition into something called the Exsultet, right?
Yes. So the Exsultet is a hymn. It's typically chanted by a deacon, although someone else can chant it too if need be. And it is about the candle, the Paschal candle, and its symbolism. It harkens back to the pillar of fire that God used to lead the Israelites through the desert. It talks about the resurrection of Christ. It's beautiful. It's one of my favorite parts of the liturgy, hands down. I can't really do it justice just describing it. Like, you have to be there to hear it chanted. You can also read it ahead of time in order to get in your mind what you're going to hear, but it's an experience to hear it.
It's really the church's victory song.
Yeah.
And it's got this refrain, right? Or it's got a couple of things. One line that I love in there is the line about, "Oh, happy fault."
Yes.
That's the old Felix culpa line in Latin. "Oh, happy fault, oh, necessary sin of Adam, which gained for us so great a Redeemer." That's actually a concept from two medieval theology or Christian theologies, but the whole concept of the happy fall or the happy fault. And then there's a refrain, right, that runs through the Exsultet, which is, "This is the night,"
Yes.
right? They keep saying, "This is the night." And then they look back at biblical events. They say, "This is the night of the Passover. This is the night the Red Sea was crossed. This is the night that Christ burst the bonds of death." And what it's really telling is the whole story of salvation from Genesis on, saying, "This is the night. This is the night."
As
cool.
you said, it's the church's song of triumph, the church's song of joy, and just exaltation. It's called the Exsultet. It's the exaltation that we experience because of Christ's victory over death.
Now, there's so many cool things. It lasts about, when they sing it, about 7 minutes or recite it or chant it. It's about 7 minutes long. One of the cool moments in it to listen for is when it thanks the bees, like as in the bees, like bzzz, bees. It thanks the bees for making the wax of the Paschal candle, the Easter candle. And because it is the church makes certain specifications of materials, like it has specifications for what the communion hosts can be made out of and what the communion wine is. And it actually makes specifications that the Paschal candle has to be beeswax. And it's cool because in the Exsultet, there's actually a line in there that thanks the bees for making the candle. Anyway, I just think that's fun.
And it specifically thanks the mother bees because those are the bees that make the wax. And it's symbolic because, of course, Christ receives his humanity from his mother, the Blessed Virgin Mary. And so the candle, which represents Christ, is made by mother bees.
That's super cool. So that's okay. So you wait until the sun, wherever you are, crosses the horizon and all that stuff, and nautical twilight is over. And then you get fire and procession and chanting, and then this long, amazing victory song that ties everything together. And then we go into the liturgy of the word.
Yes. And of course, every Mass has a liturgy of the word, but this is a liturgy of the word that's
on
more
steroids.
That's exactly the phrase I was looking for. Liturgy of the word on steroids. And so the idea is that it's a walk through salvation history and that you need time. You're not supposed to rush it. There are seven Old Testament readings and one epistle from the New Testament and a gospel reading. And each of them has a responsorial psalm that comes after it, and each of them has a prayer like the collect at the beginning of a typical Mass that goes with it. And so it's supposed to be slow and meditative, and you're supposed to be able to reflect on the breadth of what God has been doing. It starts with the creation of the world. Let there be light. Again, that imagery of the light coming into the world. And it goes through, it can't hit everything, of course, or else you'd literally be there all night. But
one cool moment. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So it hits like the Exodus of the parting of the Red Sea, which was one of the scriptural images that was in the Exsultet that's really called to mind with the procession with the candle. It has several prophecies about Christ's victory.
And then there's a cool moment in there where it transitions to the resurrection, the gospel story of the resurrection, where the bells are heard. Because there's no bells in the liturgy during Lent. Since Ash Wednesday, we've not had bells. And so bells are allowed to be rung again. You have bells in the Gloria. We haven't had the Gloria.
The return of the Gloria, because you didn't have the Gloria during liturgies in Lent. And the return of the Alleluia, which is the biggest thing, because Alleluia literally in Hebrew means praise the Lord. It's always been the church's song of victory and triumph of the resurrection. So we've fasted from it all through Lent, and then it comes roaring back when you get to the gospel in the Easter Vigil.
Now, this is the part, because we've had all of these cool elements, the fire and the processions and thanking the mother bees and all of this stuff, right? And then now we've had like 9 readings on the Gloria and everything else. Now we're like an hour and a half into this thing or something. I don't know. And it's starting to, it's starting to get long, but you don't really, I guess I'm saying that, but I don't think I don't know, when you're in it, it's just, it wrapped up. It's like going to a really great movie.
Yeah. There's a sort of time stoppage.
Yeah.
Phenomenon.
You go see a really great great blockbuster movie at the theater, and you sit in there and it's 2.5 hours or a big 3-hour long movie, but you're so wrapped up in it that, oh my gosh, that it isn't like you're sitting there staring at your watch. Whereas a lot of times you're in church and you're like, oh, we've been here 18 minutes, we've been here 21 minutes, we're at 23 minutes. But it doesn't feel like that when you're in a movie, or you go to a big concert, or you go to a football game, or whatever it is, that something that is fully engaging. And the Easter Vigil is that kind of an engaging experience where it's going on and on. There's a lot going on here, but you're so wrapped up in it that you're not really looking at your watch. Okay, so we wrap with the liturgy of the word. And then before we transition to the liturgy of the Eucharist, which we would in every Mass, now comes the payoff, especially because this episode is part of the OCIA series, to the things that we talked about in the last episode, which is the sacraments of initiation. They occur at the Easter Vigil between the liturgy of the word and the liturgy of the Eucharist. And so now all those things, the baptism of the catechumens, the confirmation of the catechumens and candidates, the preparation for their first communion, all of this, the sacraments of initiation, happen right here and sandwiched in the middle of the Vigil Mass.
Yeah, and the reason for that is because they come from the death and resurrection of Christ. That baptism specifically is a participation in the death and resurrection of Christ. And so it makes sense that we've observed his death, his passion on Good Friday, and then now, Holy Saturday into Easter Sunday, we're celebrating his resurrection, that baptism happens because those people who are being baptized will die with Christ and rise with Christ to new life. And so there's various parts to the baptismal liturgy. We don't have to get granular about it here, but essentially the catechumens are brought forth, they're prayed over, they're baptized. The whole congregation has a chance to renew their own baptismal promises.
Yeah, let's pause here for a second, because that's another big important part of this, is that when the catechumens are baptized, the entire congregation renews their baptismal promises. So the very promises that we make to reject Satan and all of his pomps and all those kinds of things, that we go through those. The priest asks everybody to reaffirm them, and then we don't all get rebaptized, but we a little bit do, because he goes around and he sprinkles everybody with the water.
Yes. Yeah, as a reminder of that baptism.
So he's got this, if you've never seen it, because obviously you're considering Catholicism, the priest has this, I don't know, it's kind of like a little bucket. And he's got this,
it's called an aspergillium, which is one of my favorite words.
Yes. Aspergillium, yeah. And it's basically like a little thing.
It can look like a little ball on a stick, or sometimes they'll even have ones that look like a little tree branch.
Yeah, and then it's like he dips it in the bucket and it fills with water, and then he like walks around shaking it, and it spritzes you. And so he goes up and down the aisles of the church spritzing everybody with basically with baptismal water. It's really, and while the choir sings or whatever, it's really cool. But what that's going on there is, again, not only are the catechumens being baptized, but we are all reaffirming our baptism. And then we transition, and then there's the confirmation, the rite of confirmation.
Yes.
And then we transition into the Eucharist, and then that's obviously the celebration of the Eucharist is something we do in every Mass.
But I think here, because you've had all of that buildup of the celebration of both Christ's death and resurrection, and you've had these other sacraments, it really puts the Eucharist kind of in context as the climax of the whole thing. That now Christ's sacrifice and his resurrection are becoming really and sacramentally present in the Eucharist, and we all get to receive him. But then the catechumens, who are now baptized Catholics, get to receive him for the first time. This is like the summit of the mountain that it's all been building up towards.
Yeah.
Even though it happens really cool at all the other Masses, in the context here, it's the biggest deal of all of these things.
I think in the Missal, too, there's a different Eucharistic form that they use. The Eucharistic
prayers.
There
are specific prayers, yeah.
Specific Eucharistic prayers, and I think they're a little bit longer and more involved and all that at the Easter Vigil. So it really is, it's the Feast of Feasts, the summit of summit. It is the holiest night of the year for the liturgy. It is the Super Bowl of the Catholic Church, if you would. The Super Bowl of the liturgy. It is the night of nights, and just really powerful. And one of the things I think is an important point to make here is that for a lot of people, for a lot of parishes, certainly in my case and in your case, when we came into the Catholic Church, we came in at Easter Vigil. And for those of you who are listening out there, your church, if you're a candidate who has already been validly baptized, as we talked about in the last episode, it's possible that you enter at a different time during the year. It depends on what your local custom is, what your local diocese or parish is choosing to do, because technically the catechumens must always come in at Easter Vigil. Some parishes have a rite of reception for candidates at other times during the year. The reason I'm bringing it up is the fact that for a long time in a lot of parishes, they brought in everybody at Easter Vigil. And I liked that because when I entered the church and when you did, it really was the summit of this whole big journey. It was the payoff to enter the Catholic Church and to come into full communion with the church, receive the sacraments of initiation at Easter Vigil was really great. Some parishes are choosing to bring in candidates at different times during the year, but it's cool if you can do it at Easter Vigil. Cory, final thoughts about the Easter Vigil Mass?
Go to it. I mean,
I mean, by the way, if it starts, depending again on my geeky stuff about where you are in latitude and longitude and time zones and time of year, it can start really late, like 9 o'clock or whatever. If you're further north than us, like I think if you're up in Alaska or the northern part of Scotland or something, the sun doesn't go down until 11 o'clock at night. So I guess they do it really late.
Yeah,
but
it's funny because the missal actually says that it has to be done before dawn. So
right.
I've been to them that are 3 or 4 hours long. In theory, it could be longer depending on how long you take over everything or how many people are baptized. But
and you think about places where the sun doesn't go down until 11 o'clock at night, 10, 11 o'clock at night. I remember the first time I went to the Highlands of Scotland. This was many years ago. We got into this small town in the Highlands of Scotland, and I think we got there at 9:30 at night. And the guy that we went up there to meet is, "Do you want to go play golf?" I'm like, but he goes, it's 9 o'clock at night, and the sun isn't going to go down for another 2 hours. We can go squeeze in 9 holes. And I'm like, okay. But the thing is, right? So I guess up there, you might start the Easter Vigil at 11 o'clock at night. But the point is it does fulfill your Sunday obligation.
Yes, it is a Sunday Mass.
So you can sleep in.
You can sleep as long as you want after that.
That's right. So if you're there really late, and if they have, like our parish does, we have a little reception afterwards. Mm-hmm. And so you don't get home until the wee hours, but then because it's a Vigil Mass, you've fulfilled your obligation. So you don't need to get up and get to church for Easter Sunday morning, which is also a very cool Mass.
Yes.
So you could go to both. But in any case, that's really great. Hey, talk to your OCIA director, talk to your pastor, find out how your parish does it. Do they bring in the candidates at Easter Vigil or at other times during the year? But by all means, plan. If you are already a member of the Catholic Church, you're already in, whatever, make sure you go to Easter Vigil. If you are a catechumen, that's where the summit is going to be. And if you're a candidate, hopefully you'll get to come in then. But anyway, good stuff. Very cool. It is, in all seriousness, the holiest night of the year, right?
Yep.
Very cool. All right. Hey, thanks, Cory. And
yep, my pleasure.
And since you're mentoring or sponsoring a catechumen at your parish, you'll be there standing up at the Easter Vigil.
I'll be there. I always go. I'm geeked out about it.
Yeah, you'll be there standing there as the godparent sponsor for your catechumens. So very cool.
And you'll be there shepherding all of them in.
I will.
At Our Lady.
Look forward to it. All right. Hey, God bless. Take care. Good night, everybody.
Yep.
And we'll be back soon with more episodes. We'll be back with another episode very soon. And this show is 100% listener supported. My patrons keep the lights on, and they let me spend more time researching and recording so that these episodes keep coming. If this show has helped you, would you consider becoming a patron? For as little as $5 a month, you'll get every regular episode organized into topical playlists, plus exclusive bonus content, extra video Q&As, deep dive courses, live streams, and more. Just head to patreon.com/considering Catholicism or tap the link in the show notes. And would you please rate the podcast on whatever platform you're using and write a review on Apple Podcasts or on consideringcatholicism.com. And you can drop me a line. Patrons can comment directly on Patreon posts or Spotify. I read every one.
Or you can always use the contact form at consideringcatholicism.com, or you can email me at consideringcatholicism@gmail.com. I love hearing your questions, your comments, and your stories.